This is Space Cats Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Dune by Gale Force 9. Episode 121.
Dune, Learning the Fremen.
Music by Brian Capillas. Hosted by Hunter Donaldson and Matt Martins.
Hunter, I'm gonna lead something off here.
Okay.
This is gonna be fun. This is a fun thing for you. So people don't know it yet, but they're gonna know it now. I'm having a baby. I'm having a baby soon. Yeah, Hunter, I'm telling them. And also, I'm telling you for the first time. We found out the gender. I'm having a little baby girl in
my
June,
God.
in mid to late June. Hunter's literally hearing that for the first time.
I didn't
You're all
know
hearing
that.
Isn't this a fun way to start the episode? I've been waiting to do this all
so
week.
Cool. Oh my God. Oh, that's wild, Matt. I can't. How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, gotcha.
I
wanted to hear it. I needed it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's what you wanted a girl one, right? That's what you were looking for.
Well, it was either girl or it was throw it out. I don't know. Give it up. Somebody else is taking it.
Oh boy. That's how Matt plays it.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. I'm pretty blown away by that. And also annoyed that you kind of put. I like to keep myself together when I'm recording.
Right. Sure,
whenever I'm doing
not giving
stuff.
her a chance to really emote here.
Yeah, and so I just feel kind of called out weirdly.
So what I'm curious how you plan to ruin my daughter for me.
What?
'Cause that's how all my friends are. All my friends for years have been plotting of like, okay, Matt, when you have a child, we get to ruin its brain against you. Like we get to work it against you. We get to subterfuge and turn your child into one of our pawns. So I'm curious where that works for you.
I'm not really sure where you're getting all of that from, but
the conversations you have all held in front of me about my eventual child.
I don't think you're
and
supposed
what Sean
to...
and Shelton want to, convince the child of.
Right. So I'll say this. I don't think I'm going to have to do anything specific. I've got cool uncle written all over me top to bottom. And I'm just going to play it. I'm just going to play it how I play it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do anything in particular. I'm not going to be like Sean and Shelton and give your kid like literature, because like God knows you're not going to let it read anything, like you're just going to be like, oh, Game of Thrones is cool to read. And then she'll be like, oh, anything else?
Do you want to make some beer with me?
But yeah, and then I'll just be like the cool, fun uncle who's funny, and then your daughter will be like, why doesn't he have any kids? And you'll be like, well, it's
because he is better at not making mistakes.
Oh,
oops.
Ooh,
I'm
wow,
kidding.
that's
super
weird.
Stoked.
You're gonna have to.
Well, it would be a mistake for you to have a child.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, this is a great start to this episode. Just kind of started, and then you punch me with niceness, and then you punch me with
Turn
meanness.
it around. I gotta keep you even. Gotta keep you regular.
Yeah. It's like you gave me a little sweet little chocolate, and then as I was eating it, you slapped me in the face. Well, yeah, that's wild, man. I don't really see how daughters tie into Dune or the Fremen.
Right, that's gonna be tricky.
Yeah.
It should be noted. We'll get into Gen Con stuff here coming up soon. Like a lot of the Gen Con announcements are actually like you probably just missed the window on getting your hotel for Gen Con. By the way, Gen Con tickets are on sale. We'll have like
oh my God, do we have our hotel figured out?
Yeah, we did that a while ago together. Remember?
Oh,
anyways,
okay.
Regardless,
I'm like on the verge of having a panic attack. Okay, like you turned this on, and I'm so glad this is an episode that you wrote because I'm useless now. You told me that was such yeah. Anyways, I'm just gonna be quietly crying here, just in like weird with weird feelings and stuff. Go ahead and drive.
Anyways, my child is born a month before Gen Con, so Gen Con's gonna be real weird for me. Like in terms of, am I going? I don't know this year. This will be weird. We'll come up with it. I know we've put together our live show event thing for Gen Con. We don't know the timing of it. We don't get to know that for a while. The system is very weird, but we definitely want people to come to the live show, and I hope I get to go.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't go, I think me and EJ have got this.
Yeah,
but
you've got it.
But I think we can make it work where you get to
Probably.
go. I think so.
Well, today we've got another Dune guide. This will be number 4 out of 6 on the factions. So we're over the hump of Dune faction guides. I call them. I say faction guide. It hasn't really been that. It's been a
just kind of overviews.
Starter. Yeah, it's the learning it. So today's Fremen, and I took a little bit more of the lead on this one, so you're going to be hearing a lot from me. So I think we should dive straight into it. What do you say, Hunter?
let's ride the worm.
Let's ride the worm, baby. So to kick things off, the Fremen, just as the overview of kind of what all they start with, you get to pick. You're the only faction in the game that gets to pick where your starting units go, and you get to choose between Sietch Tabur, False Wall South, and False Wall West. You have 10 forces that you get to distribute between those 3 spaces. So we'll talk about it more later, but basically one of these spaces is much better than the others. One of them is fine, and one of them is like we're not putting anything there. We're never going to worry about it.
Oh yeah, keep it secret.
It exists
for now, though.
So then you also obviously have 10 in your reserves for a total of 20. You start with 3 spice, which turns out super duper bad.
That's
not
bad.
You have what I'm going to say are the best leaders in the game. Numerically, Bene Gesserit has you beat, right? They have the best team. They're all 5s. So numerically, they add up to like 25. But you add up to like 23. You have a 7, a 6, a 5, a 3, and a 2. So between the 7, 6, and 5, you literally tie or are better than every single other faction's leaders. Plus 1 that is definitely better. Your 7 Stilgar exceeds everyone else at the table. So you have the best leaders. This is something we're going to lean on pretty heavily. You also get 3 free. You're the only faction who gets 3 free revival every turn. Everyone else is either 2 or 1, and you get 3 free revivals, which is fine. It's good. It's fine. It is added to the list of basically things that Fremen gets to do for free, which that list kind of keeps growing as we go through all of these different abilities. Next up, so you have basically all of their abilities are just slight adjustments to all the normal rules. In shipment, you get free shipment if you are shipping to the Great Flat or within 2 of the Great Flat. So a pretty wide region there. I mean, that is like a third of the map, if not a little bit more than a third of the map, that you just ship to for free. So you don't care about the Spacing Guild. This isn't really included in like the wording. You kind of have to catch this, but your units and reserves start on the other side of the planet Arrakis, Dune. So what that means is you also never pay the Spacing Guild when you ship. Even if you're shipping somewhere where you would be paying, you don't pay the Spacing Guild because you're not paying for off-planet shipping. That's a weird thing that took me a long time to realize was a factor.
That's one of those things that makes more sense if you think about it thematically. Like, why would you Why would you pay the Spacing Guild to just move around on the planet you already live on?
Right. So this shipment is very good. It's kind of probably the best thing about you because it's just a huge thing that you get to do for free. It also lets you focus your money on other things besides shipment. You get to focus in on getting cards, which we're going to talk a lot about cards. You need them very badly, and you don't have much money, especially to start off with. So buying cards, it's good that your money basically only needs to be focused on that one thing, because otherwise you would be broke all game for sure. The other thing is you get to just like dump all of your dudes at once if you want to, which is really great for timing attacks, or you can be pretty good at holding territory, basically. Like, because you can just like hold the whole eastern side of the map more or less whenever you want to. You just drop all the dudes there, and yeah, they can basically, the Fremen, this is the first focus of like, Fremen are very positionally based. Whereas everybody else is doing freaky stuff with their weirdo abilities, Fremen is just like, get on the map, be where you need to be, get the stuff, and win the game, right? That is kind of the Fremen's main thing. They're not very tricky. Next up, Fremen have many individual abilities, turns out. So the next one is an adjustment to movement. Your movement, you get to move 2 spaces no matter what, instead of just 1. Whereas everybody else can move 1, and then when they have ornithopters, they can move 3. You can use 2, which kind of then just means like you don't really care about ornithopters. You could go get ornithopters and then move 3, but you're already moving 2. Why waste the time like really struggling to get Carthag or Arakeen? And you can't ship to Carthag or Arakeen for free, so why not ship somewhere for free and then move 2 for free is kind of the general idea with Fremen. You can pretty much hit a huge portion of the map by shipping to the limits of how far you can ship and then moving 2 away from that. That is most of the map that you get to. So it's very rare that you care about ornithopters in any sense.
The next ability is Shai Halud. Essentially, the worms on Arrakis, they don't eat you. They refuse to eat you. You're stinky, so they're like, ugh, pee you. And you can ride them around. So, I mean, you've got this extra movement, but also you kind of randomly get to just go wherever you need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way it works is anytime the worm does pop up in a nexus, the worm pops up, then you do a nexus, and then when the nexus is done, you get to ride the sandworm to any other territory that is sand, right?
Right.
So you can get pretty much all over the map, and then from there, move again during the shipment phase, right? So this is like your one little catch-all to get onto the other side of the map that normally you don't have much range to. Just another reason you just don't need ornithopters.
Right.
The other advantage this gives you is you get to just like go for spice, because the only place that the worm is going to hit is where the spice just landed in this last turn, and everybody else always has that fear of like, okay, I'm going to go for the spice, but if the worm hits, that's going to suck. And for you, not only does it not suck, but it is actually kind of great and one of the better things that can happen to you in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And combined with your very, very good leaders and like not being afraid of the risk of it and other players being afraid of the risk of the worm, sometimes you can go to where the spice is and somebody else will just be like, it's not worth it. I don't want to have to fight Stilgar and then also maybe lose my units to the worm.
Yeah.
So you being the first one to get to a spice below a lot of times can just mean you lock it down and nobody else even tries to fight you for it.
One thing I want to ask a question on. I don't know the answer to this. If you ride the worm to a location that already has someone else's forces on it, does the worm eat those forces when it drops you off, essentially?
No, I think you just get to move. It doesn't say anything about the worm like eating everything in its path or whatever, like eating its places in the destination. Okay, it's just a matter of you end up there and get dropped off.
Cool.
If that's not true, please let us know. That would be a weird errata.
I also want to add something to what you were saying. Like, always remember, though, if we're talking hunting spice, that early on, your treachery card hand is probably not going to be very good. So you got to be careful about other factions maybe jumping on you early if they have better treachery cards than you.
Right. You know what? And earlier I said you only move to sand territories, and I think that is technically wrong, because the wording is you move some or all forces in the territory to any territory subject to storm and occupancy rules. So you can drop anywhere. I think the big difference here is you do have occupancy rules. You don't get to go somewhere where somebody else is. So it's very rare that you're going to be able to just drop your people into a stronghold.
But it says storm rules too, which I feel like would mean that you can't go where the storm doesn't affect.
No, I think that's just saying that you can't go into the storm without. Well, you have some storm rules of your own later. We'll get to them, but yeah, generally speaking, you can't really go through the storm.
Interesting,
even with the worm. So, it's kind of a weird, crazy ability, and honestly, it really only comes up every once in a while because not only does it have to be after a nexus, which there's maybe 3 or 4 of those a game, kind of, maybe more, but. You have to be hit by it for it to even do anything for you. So it's a cool ability, but it's not like something you're ever relying on. It's just something that you get to take advantage of if it does happen. The way you're relying on it is the lack of fear of being hit by a worm when you're going out for spice. That's the number one advantage it grants you. It's just like, ooh, I get to go jump on spice kind of whenever I want. And the last of the basic abilities is you have a special Fremen victory condition. And it's wackadoodle. It's crazy. So I'm just going to read it all word for word because it's kind of hard to grasp, and you kind of even have to be looking at a map of Dune for it to make any sense. But if no faction has won by the end of the last turn, and if you or no one occupies Sietch Tabur and Habanya Sietch, and neither Harkonnen, Atreides, nor the Emperor occupies Tuix Sietch, your plans to alter Dune have succeeded, and you and any allies win the game. So you need the whole eastern side of the board completely clear, and you need that southwestern city. I say south, whatever. I know we're all in the... I get it, thank you. But if I'm just looking relative to the map, the southwestern portion of the map, that stronghold, you just don't want 3 of the other members at the table to be there. And then you win, which is a weird way to put that. Oh yeah, if this happens, and then this and this and this happens, then you just win. So it's it's a weird one, but you actually can kind of rely on it. And if anything, I'm going to argue you do kind of lean into this until the moment that you don't, which is to say, Fremen is a little bit of a stalling faction. You're just trying to hit everybody because you've got kind of this fun, crazy mobility and, a lot of free shipment. And as long as you can get cards to back up your very good leaders, you are way better at shutting other people's victories down than setting up your own, which means you do kind of lean into just pushing the game out to its very, very final round and winning this way. It's just that winning this way can be kind of tricky if you're on your own, and also fairly tricky in most alliances. We'll talk about that later. But the bigger thing is that it is specifically harder than the Spacing Guilds. Yeah. The Spacing Guilds is the same exact thing as yours, except for without all of the weird qualifiers. So that's sort of explaining kind of like how strange this ability is.
Yeah, so the next ability that they have is called Storm Rule. So essentially, they get to peek at where the storm is going to go before it goes there. So they can basically plan out. It's just kind of goes further with their other abilities to say that the Fremen basically get to hunt for spice however they want, right? Because they know where the storm is going to go.
Yeah, you are still kind of afraid of the storm, but the fact that it is a known variable to you means other people would be like, "Ooh, this one's within 4 of the storm. I don't know if that's going to be safe," and you never have that issue. You just know exactly where the storm is going to hit. So you definitely just go for all the spice that you know isn't going to get hit. But it's going to combo with a later rule called storm losses that I'll talk about here in a second to make it where there's even some situations where you're like, you know what? I know the storm's going to hit me, but I kind of don't care. I'm going to go for it anyways.
Right. Well, yeah. So I feel like storm losses is basically for the weather control ability. Right. So even if for some reason the storm were to move in a way that you did not expect, then you're still okay. Don't even really take that many losses.
Right. Yeah, the Fremen's whole theme is everybody's got stuff, but none of it works as good against you because you're from here. You know how all of this world works, so all the stuff doesn't work as good against you.
You're familiar.
Your next one is a Sandworms ability. And this one's another super specific, basically caveat to a rule, which is if there is during a spice blow, all additional sandworms that appear after the first sandworm can be placed by you in any sand territory you wish. Any forces there except yours are devoured. So this is where I was getting kind of the being in a sand territory thing only mixed up. But any second, third, fourth, etc. sandworms, you get to just decide where they go instead of them hitting the same spice blow again or whatever. You get to dictate where they go, which means you can use this in 2 different ways, right? You can hit your own units with the sandworm and then ride the worm to get this crazy bonus movement, or you can catch someone's forces out of position and go kill all their units with a sandworm. So it's got 2 pretty useful uses, except for you don't really, it just randomly happens. The chances of getting 2 sandworms in a single spice blow are, few and far between. So another thing that is fun, but you're not ever relying on this.
Yeah, that's 2 abilities they have now that are RNG based. That, I mean, the Shai Halud ability of the worm coming to you and then you get to ride it. I mean, you'll have plenty of games where that doesn't even happen to you, much less this for sure.
Right. Next up is that ability we were saying earlier, Storm Losses. Storm Losses, if your forces are caught in a storm, only half of them are killed. Any fractions are rounded up. You may also bring your reserves into a storm at half loss. So basically, you can go through storms and you just lose half your units. This is one of those things that is... you're not going to use it for a lot of the game, but you might use it to win the game.
Right.
This is like a final round thing of it's very costly to go like through the storm, but if it means you're attacking Arrakeen when no one else can go to Arrakeen and you get to just take it with a big force, that's like a game-winning move right there. Or maybe it's not the last move, but it's like, this is my only opportunity to knock out Arrakeen or Carthag or something. I better jump on it now. So it's definitely can be crazy useful, but a lot of the times you're just like not even going to see it come up. You're not going to see the opportunities for why you should do it. But the other big thing is because you know where the storm's going to hit and you're always out there hunting for spice, sometimes you just let the storm wash over you and yeah, okay, I lost 2 units. I'll be okay. I get 3 back for free. It's not a big deal.
I feel like this ability can be really cool, and this is another just kind of like, well, I mean, sometimes this will happen, sometimes this won't, but if the shield wall has been blown up,
right,
and the, once the shield wall is blown up, then the Imperial Basin and Arrakeen and Carthag are affected by the storm. That means effectively when the storm is over, Carthag or Arrakeen, it's closed off to everybody except you, basically.
Right. Yeah, it can be huge in the pace of the game. Late game after the wall has blown up, this ability is probably a lot better.
Yeah.
than up until that point. And the other thing too to mention is combining this ability with Bene Gesserit's advisor ability. You two are the only 2 that can flip units during the storm. So we already mentioned that you can do it, but it's kind of an interesting little synergy you have with Bene Gesserit where both of you can launch these kinds of in the storm attacks. Which we're going to put into the bucket of, hey, that's probably a pretty good advantage to ally with Bene Gesserit. But we'll talk about the alliances here in a bit. Okay, we're not done, though. There are still more abilities. This is like the biggest list of abilities of any
it's
faction.
ridiculous.
Maybe Bene Gesserit has as many. But our next one is Fedaykin. Fedaykin you have these 3 special units that have a little star on them, and those units are... they count as 2. They are worth 2 normal forces in battle and in taking losses, and they are treated as 1 force in revival. So you get them back fairly cheaply. The one caveat there is only 1 Fedaykin force can be revived per turn. So you get them back fairly slowly, but you don't even have that many. It's not like the biggest deal in the world to lose one. You can get them back. You just generally don't want to leave them in stacks together that then they all get taken out at once. Because as long as you just like lose one, you can get it back next turn, and you'll never really be out of Fedaykin. So it's not the biggest deal in the world as long as you aren't putting them in big stacks. But when you do decide to put them in big stacks to then take a big major outpost or something, you can combo that with your 7-point leader, and like you can win fights numerically a lot. Like that is your advantage. It's just like, I'm going to have the better numbers a lot of the time. Everybody else has these little tricks to fights, but you are just going to have the better raw numbers almost every time.
They're the de facto best. They're better than the Sardaukar or the Sardauk, whatever, however you say it.
Sardaukar.
I don't even care anymore. Because the Sardaukar actually have a little exception in that they are not good against the Fremen. They don't get their... So it's a very similar type of unit that the Emperor has, this kind of 2-for-1 token, but against you, not as good.
Doesn't work. Yep. Their Sardaukar only work as 1 unit when they fight against Fedaykin. Next up, you have a special battle ability in the advanced rules. In the advanced rules, normally you have to pay spice to get your units to fight at full combat strength, and you don't have to do that as the Fremen. So yet another thing everyone else is spending money on that you are not spending money on. So yeah, you start super broke in this game, but there is literally only one thing in the game that you need to spend money on, and it is cards. And if you get those cards...
I want to say this, though. Because whenever we were writing this, and if you're looking at this list of abilities, you might be feeling like, wow, Fremen is pretty cool. I mean, like, they basically, they're poor. They're the poor people, but they don't need money. Right. Except for treachery cards, I would say are one of the most clutch aspects of the entire game.
Right.
Very
and
important.
that can shut you out of a lot of things in the game if you just don't get a good hand. you can go 4 rounds without a good hand as Fremen, and that's too many rounds, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that
yes.
is way too many rounds to not have a good hand. So it's actually very, very important that you find a way to get good cards, and that's why you kind of do need to be fairly aggressive early on with these forces, getting these Fedaykin out on the board, getting everything into good positions, picking up a lot of spice, because you have got to get some income so that you can buy good cards. And this is just kind of, this is the way of the Fremen, is fighting for everything you need, tooth and nail.
This is the way? Is that what you're saying?
This is the way.
This is the way. Okay. All right.
Their
crossover
Karama,
episode.
I always hate talking about Karama cards because I just think they're just wacky as heck. But Fremen's is, I'm not going to do the thing that we've been doing where we're just like, I don't know, doesn't seem that great. Doesn't seem like a great Karama ability.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, go ahead.
It doesn't seem that great, but go ahead and describe it.
Okay, so the Karama ability for the Fremen is you get a Sandworm token, and when you play the Karama, you get to drop that Sandworm token wherever you want in a sand territory. And it basically works the same way any other worm ever works. If you drop it on yourself, you get to ride the worm. If you don't drop it on yourself, you can you can go kill somebody else's outpost. It's the exact same situation as before, except for this time you have control over it. Mm-hmm. Every other worm is just like a random chance that it popped up, but this is like your one worm that you get to use how you want to use it. This can have some major implications, in my opinion. It's obviously great when you need to just like, oh shoot, someone, let's say Harkonnen attacks Atreides at Errakeen, and they both kind of wipe each other out, and now Errakeen is like super undefended, but you're very far from Errakeen. If you have a Karama, you can play that Karama and move all of your units very, very close to Errakeen, and now you can use your 2 movement to get into Errakeen when it was weakly defended or whatever. This is kind of your clutch. How do I get to the other side of the map at a moment's notice? Oh, I can use a worm real quick, and I don't have to rely on chance happening. So it's a major way to turn a bad position into a win. And the other thing that you can do with it is you can, if someone else is out there, you can block someone else from getting the spice they need. If someone went after some spice, you can play that Karama card and kill all their units and remove all the spice. If you weren't able to beat them there, or you did fight them there and then they beat you, you can just play the Karama and wipe them out and keep, Harkonnen from getting that last few bucks that they desperately needed to improve their next round or whatever.
I want to remind anybody that might be listening and excited about, like, maybe you're less familiar with the game, but you just heard us describe this and you're like, I'm pretty sure that's great. You can only place a Sandworm token in a sand territory.
Right.
So
it's not just anywhere. You gotta.
It's not a nuke you can drop
it
wherever you want.
Right.
You can basically the only time you're ever really going to get to use it is when people have, forces kind of stranded out in the sand that aren't really doing anything, which are kind of those forces are going to be vulnerable regardless to all kinds of stuff, including your Karama, obviously. Or like when somebody's hunting for spice.
Right.
So I don't know. I think we're fair in saying this one isn't that good. And I think
I just think it's one of those situations where it's like it's generally going to be kind of like maybe you'll use it as like any of the other normal Karama abilities, but I do see an excuse for holding on to this one until the late game to make it your like last big push, especially as a stopgap for if you are just trying to hold out for a final round scenario and you need to go, somebody else screwed it up on the other side of the table and oh shoot, it looks like Harkonnen is going to win. This might be your way to get in there before they're able to steal a victory, right?
Yeah.
You can get across the map very, very fast and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So I think it can come in super big handy
for sure
when the moment arises. But like through the first like 5 rounds, it's probably not. It's not something.
I mean, the free movement alone is pretty cool. And I mean, Karama cards, what you just play them whenever it's appropriate, I guess. Right. So like, yeah, you could be like, oh, I've got I need to take this last stronghold. You move your Fremen out of your current stronghold into a sand thing, drop a sandworm, and then move them. Teleport.
What's
them
a
wherever.
fun, stupid other use of this thing?
Yeah.
You could move. You could ship into a territory with sand, or I mean with some spice. And then you could worm some of those units out of that spice Oh, wait, I
And-
just tricked myself. Nope, because the worm's going to kill the spice.
Yeah, the
wherever
worm's going
you
to eat the
send it.
spice.
So you don't get to double spice up. That would have been fun. Oh, well.
That would have been cool. Well, but you can't do it that way. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Also,
all right,
here's something I just read that I forgot. You can only use your character's special Kurama power one time.
yeah.
I don't remember that.
Even if you get more Karamas. Yeah, man, Karamas are like this weird, broken part of the game that's just like, why is none of this explained better?
Yeah.
You just like have to have definitely memorized the Karama stuff because nothing on the Karama card is going to remind you of any of this.
This freaking rule book.
This freaking thing. All right, let's talk about the alliance that Fremen can offer. We have talked about it in 3 different games, or in 3 different factions so far, and generally we have been kind of like, oh, well, not sure why you need to ally up with the Fremen, but let's like dig a little bit deeper into what the Fremen actually have to offer. So, as an alliance, you may decide to protect or not protect your allies.
I
from
love
being
that little
divided-
that little
little-
parenthesis there.
protect your allies from being devoured by sandworms, and at your discretion may also allow them to revive 3 forces for free during revival. In addition, your allies win with you if you win with the special Fremen victory condition. So that's 3 different things, Hunter. That's 3 things that you get to do with the Fremen.
Yeah, but like I do
None of
not.
them are
So
good.
I do not like that sentence. May also allow them to revive 3 forces for free during revival. It should say up to 3, or like, you know what I mean. Like
Right.
you
It's
can't
not clear
you
what
can't
it's
get
actually
more
saying.
than 3 revivals unless you're allied with the Emperor. Even though I could totally see someone reading that sentence and saying, "Oh, that means I can get 3 extra for free," which is awesome. But that's not what it means.
It's not. Let's talk about that.
It doesn't
3 a
even
little
work
bit
out
more.
to 3 ever. Like it's
Right.
never.
It never
gonna-
works out. Yeah, it is mostly kind of a useless ability. Here's how it works out. Atreides and Harkonnen both refresh 1, right? They get to revive 1 for free.
'Cause they already get 2 for free.
I'm saying it backwards. I have my notes written down.
Yeah.
They revive 2 for free, which means you're only netting them 1 more per
Right,
round.
right.
Whoop-de-doo. Bene Gesserit, Space Guild, and Emperor all revive 1, which means you're increasing them by 2. That's better, but at the end of the day, it's still only up to 3. When you compare that to the Emperor's ability of like, hey, you did 3, here's 3 more, that's huge.
Right.
So the Fremens leaves something to be desired.
And I want to say that for the record, the 3 that get 2 for free as compared to 1 are the richer factions that
Right.
don't need the help.
Right, they don't even care
Maybe
about the
Bene
money.
Gesserit,
Yeah.
not as rich as the other 2, but still pretty decent.
Yeah. So that second ability, stopping the worms. Well, we've gone over the worm stuff quite a bit so far. It's random. That's just a thing that sometimes happens. What you are giving them access to is the ability to also go for spice a little bit more uninhibited, right? But also, they can't necessarily trust that. You might be a bad ally and be like, nope, I'm not protecting you from the worm.
Right, yeah. The fact
Screw
that you don't have to is maybe kind of cool, but also is like kind of not cool because
Right.
like who wants to ally with you? Like that you don't even have to protect them.
Yeah. And the last one, the Fremen Special Victory, is the weirdest special victory condition and basically useless for everyone except for Bene Gesserit. Essentially, nobody can take advantage of your special victory condition except for Bene Gesserit. So let's talk more about that. Let's get into how do each of the factions feel about you as one of their allies and how much do you want them as an ally. So we did these kind of in order. We're going to start with your best one. Your best bud is the Bene Gesserit. And there's
I don't know if
actually-
you guys have worked out a theme with
Yeah.
the Bene Gesserit
They're
and
always the best.
alliances, but
And honestly, I think there is a kind of an extra special consideration for Bene Gesserit towards Fremen, right? In every situation, yeah, everybody wants Bene Gesserit, but I really do feel like Bene Gesserit gains some decent stuff from Fremen here. I don't know. Maybe we compare that to other abilities and it doesn't shake out, but from Bene Gesserit's perspective, well, they like the 2 extra revivals. That is useful.
that's good.
They can't advisor you anyways. You ship from on planet and they get to place advisors when people ship from off planet. So you are already a thorn in their side using the ability they want to use. So they might as well ally with you to be able to use their advisors to their maximum capacity. And they are very, very good at hurting people and stopping people winning. And they are the only faction that can benefit from your special victory condition. Because they are basically the only faction that can go hold 2 CH for you while you hold the other 2, between the two of you holding just those 3 territories, if you two held those 3 territories all game, no one else could ever win, and you could lock out a victory. There's no point really in doing that with Space and Guild, because Space and Guild you just need to get to the end of the game anyways. It doesn't specifically matter that they hold 2xch. And everybody else can't hold 2xch, which means you can't lock that down. You can't fulfill your condition very easily with them as your ally. Bene Gesserit is the only one that helps you with this. So the two of you together have a very clear plan. Whereas everybody else, when you ally with someone, it's like, okay, we're kind of like waiting for an opportunity. When you ally with the Bene Gesserit, it's like, okay, we're doing exactly this until some other opportunity comes up. But we like have an exact plan in motion. And I think that is something really reliable and good for the Bene Gesserit to latch onto.
Yeah. The only thing I want to point out here, I feel like everything you're saying makes sense, and I feel like we're kind of doing a little bit of a matchmaker thing where we're trying to get like the nerd to date,
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll do it backwards. We're trying to get a nerdy poetry girl to date the jock, the coolest
Right.
jock in the school. And the Bene Gesserit is the jock, which I think makes the comparison more difficult. I think this all makes so much sense. It's just that Bene Gesserit gets their pick of the litter. They're the belle
really
of the
do.
ball.
It's worth going over from your perspective of what does Bene Gesserit offer you. And the biggest thing, and it's what Bene Gesserit offers everybody, but it's that battles become a breeze. The voice is just this ridiculously good ability. They get to tell someone that they are not allowed to play the only attack card that you don't have an answer to, which means you can basically prevent your leaders from ever being destroyed. And as the Fremen, this is especially desirable.
Well, and it can
losing Stilgar is a big deal.
Exactly. Well, and also it makes it takes a long time. It probably takes the longest time for Fremen to build up a solid hand as compared to all the other factions. Yeah. And the voice is going to help your crummy hand be viable more early, basically.
Right. Yeah. And as we said earlier, the two of you are the only two that can sneak into a storm territory. So if the storm is sitting on top of Arrakeen and the two of you have locked everything else down, you could actually make an opportunity strike at Arrakeen when no one else can, and maybe just win outright that way. So you kind of have this extra little thing that you both can do. But I still think the bigger thing is that the two of you are just very, very good at denying other people territories. So you're just both very good at stalling, and it gives you a really reliable source of direction.
Yeah.
So next up, I don't really want to put these next two in any particular order. I've seen back and forth on which one is better. I'm just gonna even say both of them. Atreides and Emperor to me are on basically the same bar. Personally, for how I feel like I play Fremen, I like Emperor a little bit more, but there are a lot of really good arguments for Atreides that are hard to ignore. So let's start with Atreides. So from Atreides' perspective, gaining the Fremen abilities, the revival isn't a very useful benefit. You're getting one more per round. That's nothing. But what you are gaining is a partner who is very willing to go on the offensive for you, right? Fremen is mobile. Fremen's going out there and getting spice. It gives you the ability to go out there and get spice, which you kind of need as Atreides. Like if you need money somewhere, being able to just go jump on spice and not being afraid of the worm is very helpful. The Fremen can tell you if the storm is coming up. So the Atreides gets to be a little bit more reckless, and they get to be allied with someone who can be very reckless if they want to be.
Can I add a little note to this and say that I also think positionally it just makes sense.
Yeah,
the fact
definitely.
that Atreides is like, all right, I've got ornithopters locked down at Arrakeen. I need to keep Arrakeen. And then the Fremen can just basically do everything else, and both of you can basically move better than everybody else. It's obviously everything we're about to say is also true of the Harkonnen, but the flip side of that is
the Atreides have way better abilities. So from your perspective, the Atreides abilities actually help you win fights versus Harkonnen basically doesn't at all. So the Atreides ability to have the opponent show one thing from their battle plan gives the Fremen a pretty major combat advantage. So when you ally with the Atreides, you are going for that normal victory. You're not trying to stall out, because the Atreides are not going to help you because they can't hold to Exich. They can't help you there. But the two of you could push for Carthag, Arakeen, and both of the territories in the east, or something like that, right? You as the Fremen basically can take any of the other 3 territories and pick 2 and probably find a way to lock them down. And then all Atreides has to focus on is stealing Carthag, and the 2 of you can win outright.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is, as Fremen, for me, I think you're always starting in the headspace of how do I stall this game out for as long as possible, and shifting that into I can actually push for the win if I'm allied with Atreides is cool, but to me, it's always a risk.
Yeah.
It's always kind of a scary proposition, which is why I'm like, it sounds cool, but it always makes me nervous.
I think my pushback is just that I think for example, let's say you've got a solid hand in the mid game as Fremen. I feel like Atreides loses a couple points for that. I think you're a great early game ally, and then also this is highly dependent on Atreides' position on the board, which they don't recover that well from being kicked off the board. Atreides,
right?
So
right.
I feel like I don't like them as much as the next ally we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So Emperor, we're putting kind of on the same level, but I just think Emperor is cooler and more fun. I think the biggest thing is Emperor seems like they have more to gain from you if you sell it the right way. So the revival is more useful for Emperor, and especially vice versa. You get your 3 for free, and then Emperor can buy 3 for you. So from both perspectives, the 2 of you can just start pumping out units. From the Emperor's perspective, they don't. We talked about the Sardaukar thing. So if you are allied, they're never running up against your Fedaykin. Their Sardaukar will always be at maximum fighting strength, which that definitely has a benefit.
I want to put a little note on that rule, though. That actually doesn't apply to just Fedaykin, though. That's literally just against the Fremen, the Sardaukar, just in general, are not as good.
I actually just didn't even.
Yeah,
catch that,
just decided to get rid of that errata.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you,
Nice
Hunter.
try. Next time.
So the Sardaukar are just never good against the Fremen. So yeah, why not keep your Sardaukar useful by not having to fight against them? And the big thing for me is, and I think that the Fremen have to sell this idea a little bit to the Emperor, but I think that when the Emperor is your ally and they give you access to more cards, they're going to help you buy a lot of cards. That is what unlocks you as the Fremen, which makes you an incredibly powerful ally. Basically, you say to the Emperor, listen, if you're my ally, I can start getting the cards I need, and that will probably make me somewhat unstoppable. The only thing that's going to be up against you is like the Atreides and the Bene Gesserit abilities, but everybody else you can probably beat in fights. So I think you have to kind of convince the Emperor that, and especially because Emperor is going to have people coming to them for allies.
Right.
And so you're going to be fighting them off. But I think if you put yourself in the right position on the map, you can sell your story pretty well of like, hey, look at all these units. I could be a thorn in your side, or I could go be a major thorn in everybody else's side. Which would you prefer?
Yeah.
And
I get that.
So from your perspective, it's obviously even better. It's always even better for Fremen.
Yeah. Fremen's getting a lot more out of this than everybody else is.
The big thing is cards. You need cards in a major way, and they're going to help you get them essentially for free. You're going to get free cards and ideally good ones, and that's everything you need to like kind of have the last thing that you desire. But it doesn't hurt to have 3 extra per round, 3 extra revivals per round, giving you up to 6, which means you get to go crazy with fights, in my opinion. Like, you can just start throwing everything at the wall. This is when you even are not afraid of the storm at all. If you're getting 6 revivals every single round, you just charge straight through the storm no matter where it is. It doesn't matter that it exists, because you're going to lose a couple units, but you're going to get so many right back that it's 6. Just whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy that you can get 6 with Emperor. Yeah. I would say that maybe a way to pitch this to Emperor is that the 2 of you together are potent as far as controlling the spice blow.
Yeah.
Because if you guys both know where the storm is, and the Emperor has money to just ship wherever, they can afford to not have to ship into strongholds every time.
Right.
Then the 2 of you can just lock that down. Now, I feel like what's scary for the Emperor is shipping to places and then kind of having their troops being stuck in weird spots.
The one downside, obviously, to all this is the same thing as every other time, that your special victory condition is useless with the Emperor, basically, because of the same 2xch problem. That is a problem with essentially everyone but Bene Gesserit, so it's worth mentioning that when you play with Emperor, you're playing for a real win, not for a special victory condition.
I want to add actually one final note to this discussion of Atreides and Emperor when it comes to alliances. I feel like what might give Atreides the edge is that I feel like it might be a little hard to make this case to the Emperor. Yeah. I think there is merit to it. I just think the Emperor gets sought after as an ally, and you might not get access to them. Atreides, I feel like going into a game and being like, I'm going to try and ally with Atreides, I feel like you can make that case early a lot of the times and maybe get a lot of loyalty out of Atreides. And Atreides also helps you get cards, which is your problem.
Right. I like what you're saying about the early thing, too. If you can establish an early alliance with Atreides has some excuses to kind of push hard early as well, right? They want to go for an early victory. So there's a world where round 2 it comes up. You, too, could push for a victory in, like, round 3 if you get the right cards and if you do everything kind of correctly. I think the Atreides alliance is especially good if in rounds like 1 and 2 you get 2 pretty good cards and you started with a decent enough card. Like, if you have a good hand of 3 and Atreides has a decent hand, the two of you could do a lot of damage in the early game when nobody else has anything else online.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to what I think is their I think this is their de facto worst.
Right.
Although we've rated the next two both
together again,
kind of third place. But I think that just like by design, these two are not meant to get along, and that is the Spacing Guild.
Yeah, the Spacing Guild is super awkward. Again, we've talked about the special victory thing, and it's basically like you're only thinking about the Spacing Guild's special victory condition when you ally with them because yours has become irrelevant.
Right. There's so much easier to go for.
Yeah, there's a lot of other really messy stuff between you and the Spacing Guild. The biggest thing to wrap your head around, and this is what took me a while myself to wrap my head around, is the Spacing Guild is all about controlling the shipping rates of people coming from outer space onto Dune.
Right.
And Fremen's major thematic thing is they're not from outer space. So none of that stuff matters to them. Right. So we talked about this last time in our Spacing Guild episode, but basically you're already their last pick. None of your abilities benefit them as much as everybody else's abilities would benefit them.
They just don't even synergize. Like there's the opposite.
There's no synergy. The revivals are kind of useful for Spacing Guild, but generally speaking, I don't think Spacing Guild is being that crazy reckless. You know, they're timing their attacks and they're being a little bit
because their
sneakier.
Leaders are so bad, they're not encouraged to play that way regardless. There's nothing you can do to fix that problem for them.
Right, so they're not killing they're not having a bunch of units that they have to revive quickly. And the only argument you can make to them is like, hey, I won't waste all of your money when I ship. Like, a lot of times I can ship for free. But that's even more reason why it's like it's not beneficial. You're not getting anything out of the relationship because you're not getting... Yes, sometimes you need to ship half price to somewhere else. But like most of the time, you can probably do a workaround where you ship inside your territory where it's for free. From your own perspective, you don't have off-planet shipping, so you're already not paying the Fremen. You're just better working against them, basically. Like the fact that your money doesn't go into their hands when you ship is sort of an advantage of how you can work against them. The only time your relationship works together is when you have to get all the way on the other side of the map. And if you have a Kurama card in your hand, then you don't even care about that. Like you've rendered that useless as well.
Yeah.
So I just don't see what the synergy can possibly be with these two factions.
Also, if you followed our guide as far as setup, you started with a stack on the False Wall South, which is right next to the Spacing Guild stack on 2xch.
Yeah.
So I mean, the idea that you guys are like, I just feel like you guys are natural enemies, almost as much so as Atreides and Harkonnen. I also wanted to note something just for newer players that maybe don't remember this. I mean, last time we talked about Dune, we talked about the Spacing Guild, but I wanted to bring back up that the Spacing Guild special victory condition is that if no factions have been able to win at all just by the end of the game, then Space and Guild wins.
So every time it overrides yours as Fremen.
Yeah.
So you literally aren't even, if you are in an alliance with Space and Guild, you aren't even working towards your special victory condition anymore. You're working towards Space and Guilds.
Right. Which is, I mean, I feel like some people listening might be thinking like, oh, well, that sounds great. But then the problem is just like, why would Space and Guild want to ally with you? You know what I mean? That special victory condition will be true for Space and Guild and their alliance regardless.
Right.
So they don't need to. Yours basically gets canceled out and isn't a point for. So honestly, this is one of those situations too where like it's not good for you, but also Space and Guild has no reason to pick you. So you guys are just an awkward match. You have nothing for each other.
Yeah. So let's talk more about then Harkonnen, because I think Harkonnen is an easy one to say it's a bad match, but I still think Space and Guild is worse. So Harkonnen, they don't need you for the revivals.
Yeah.
The fear of worms thing, that is being abated by your presence is kind of helpful. Harkonnen struggles for cash. So being able to go push on spice a little bit more, that has a benefit, especially early game, I would say. If Atreides says no to you, maybe you fall back on Harkonnen as an ally. And the bigger thing, and Hunter, you're the one who kind of pointed this out to me, is it's not just that they can run for spice, but they're not competing with you over spice. Because of Carthag's position near where a lot of Fremen stuff is, means that usually you two come to blows very often. And if instead the two of you are just kind of like finding ways to work the spice between you, that maybe is an advantage. It's maybe a disadvantage, though, for Harkonnen, right? Because now they have to like wheel and deal with you over the spice blows rather than just like fighting with you. Now they literally can't fight with you. So it's like it maybe sometimes is a benefit, but maybe sometimes it is literally a detriment to you.
It is kind of weird because it's like I would probably rather extort the Fremen for spice. That way I don't even have to do anything. But I do feel like once Fremen gets their hand set up, I feel like Harkonnen can be a little scared of Fremen. They have the best faction leaders, which is that's also another thing. That's a weird point against. Harkonnen would probably like to capture your leaders if they can.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's weird. I think the only thing that I'm going to put as to say that I obviously think it's better than Space and Guild. I don't necessarily think it's better than anybody else, but there's a conditional thing here of what is Harkonnen's position like? What is your position like?
Yeah. There's a big thing where if they're able to do something to Errata and you just lock down the East, that could be a major win for the two of you. Mm-hmm. It is purely. It's like a round 7. Things have gone wrong for everybody else. Oh shoot! Look at this perfect opportunity to ally with Harkonnen. That's the only really situation I see a super beneficial,
super opportunistic, but definitely not something to like go in and plan for.
Right. All right. Well, that covers all the alliances. Obviously, just the brief overview is you want Bene Gesserit. You'll take Atreides Emperor. With Space and Guild and Harkonnen, you might literally be better off doing it on your own and just trying to stall out the game to the end. I don't know. I don't think I want to 100% say that, but in my mind, it's maybe easier to be by yourself and try and hurt everybody and keep them from winning than it is to try to ally with one of these two and have it work in your favor.
Well, I think that's I think that's reflected in the design a little bit, right? Like, I feel like Fremen, they realize that, there's like not really a reason for someone to do this by themselves, except for I feel like the Fremen victory condition, because it doesn't sync up with really any of the players except for Bene Gesserit. And so I feel like it's the kind of thing where you're just kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to just try and do, this is my Hail Mary to try and win in the end by myself, basically.
Yeah. So let's talk about some kind of round 1 stuff. We've been talking about a lot of this, how do you, stall out the game, but we already talked about Fremen have really the only round 1 choice that everybody else doesn't have, which is where do we start the units. And Hunter, you teased this, but let's talk about those 3 spaces that we can be at, right? We can be at False Wall South, False Wall West, and Sietch Tabur. Those are the 3 places we can put our initial 10 units, and we can split them up however we want. The first thing I'll say is ignore False Wall West. That is, it's not where you need to be. False Wall West is literally within the domain of where you can ship to and is not a stronghold. So I don't know why you need it. Like the argument obviously is, it's near
It's near Habanya Sietch, but you can worry about that later. There's just no reason to park all of your stuff in that territory.
Right.
So then the argument for Sietch Tabur is just, I want to get a lockdown on a stronghold now before anybody else can go take it, right? I don't want to just leave it completely empty so that Harkonnen can go jump in there for free. But the last one, False Wall South, this is the only one that is strictly outside of your zone of influence, where you can just drop things, and it's even outside of where you can get to super, super quickly, right? You can ship to the limits and then move, and False Wall South is like right at the limits. That's as far as you could get. If you shipped to the polar sink and then moved you would get to False Wall South. So this is your best opportunity to get to this side of the map for free.
Right.
Because any other time you're going to have to ship there for money or take like multiple rounds to get there. If you ship to False Wall South, you immediately have access to everywhere within 2 of that. So it's your best chance to get to the spice that might hit that side of the map. So the big argument here is you ship all 10 to False Wall South. Then if a spice blow comes up on the other side of the map, you ship the rest of your units somewhere near the Great Flat and go hit the spice on that side. You basically give yourself a better opportunity to get any and all spice in the early game by shipping 10 to False Wall South and being prepared to ship maybe your other 10 units in, the northern or southern side of Great Flat.
Yeah. It's just, False Wall West is just redundant. It's just not a spot that you need, basically. So are we all in on all 10 on False Wall South, or what's the case for splitting it up?
Let's give the case for splitting up. I'm increasingly of the opinion that I'm all in on just do False Wall South. But if you're going to put some stuff on Sietch Tabur, how do you split them up? Okay, well, let's talk about the 5-5 split. You've just made yourself kind of weak in both, and especially the 5 on False Wall South are too far away to be easily reinforced, which means you're really just locking down Sietch Tabur, so why did you ship anything to False Wall South? So we need to go higher than 5, right? So is it a 6, a 7, or an 8 sort of situation? Well, if we go above 7, if we're shipping 8 to False Wall South and 2 to Sietch Tabur, why did we even ship 2 to Sietch Tabur, right? Mm-hmm. Our Harkonnen will just go jump on us. They could care less about our 2. So what I've seen, the best argument I've seen is, and this was given to us in some pre-errata by Corbic Jane, is to do 6 to 1, 6 to False Wall South, and 4 to Sietch Tabur, and then put, of those 6, 2 Fedaykin on False Wall South and 1 Fedaykin on Sietch Tabur. So Sietch Tabur has an attacking value of 5 instead of 4, and the False Wall South has an attacking value of 8 instead of 6, and you can split that False Wall South force up if you need to for spice or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't hate this, basically, is all I can really come down to on it, is it's I see the argument. It's kind of just playing devil's advocate for pushing yourself away from 10, and it gives you decent forces on both sides of the map. I don't know. What do you think, Hunter?
I think this is the smartest way to do something that, just do it the easy way. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is the smartest way you could split them up. I feel like you're kind of needlessly risking Harkonnen having an uncharacteristically good first round. And it also depends a lot on that first order.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah.
The first order could be a big determining factor. If you are last in the order, I would make an argument that you are more encouraged to put some starting units on Sietch Tabur, right? Because
Sure.
you don't
Yeah.
want 2 other people going there and kind of locking you out of it for a while. Now, again, that argument isn't very strong because you can always ship nearby and go in at some point later. But if you're really wanting to prevent someone from a round 1 victory or whatever, or a round 2 strength, you could get a couple on Sietch Tabur so that only one other person can go there, and you keep the battle kind of in your realm. But if you're early in the order, though, you don't really care about that because you can always just ship and move there before anybody else gets there anyways. So you might as well put the 10 in False Wall South and then ship and move the rest into Sietch Tabur, or ship directly to Sietch Tabur.
I would just hate to recommend that you split them up, and then that first storm can be so wackadoodle with the two players that picking on the dial that there's really no way to predict what that first order. You're going to make this decision, I guess, is what I mean, before you know what the turn order is going to be.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, an issue, and so I think the play of splitting them up, especially the way that Corbeck Jane described. That's like that kind of thing where you're playing optimally, but maybe playing a bit risky. The likelihood that Harkonnen is going to have a better hand than you is really high.
Yes.
They also have competitive leaders. And also Harkonnen, sometimes, if the conditions end up being correct, does go for an early game victory or a first round victory.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the only faction where we've talked about that as a possibility. So I just feel like you're kind of needlessly risking that. But also, this comes down to, we're really just talking about one player, right? We're just talking about Harkonnen. I mean, I guess the only other player that could threaten you is the Emperor, and they have a very specific reason to not threaten you. So if you know the Harkonnen player and they're like, you don't think they're going to go for this, then whatever.
Right. I agree with that. So the other thing you need to do early, and we sort of teased this, but like, you have to get cards. So my big thing is you start with 3 spice. You have nothing else to spend that spice on round 1 besides a card. So you should plan to get 1 card that you spend all $3 on. That can even be tricky in some meta. Some people are like, you can't get a card for cheaper than 4 sometimes. I mean, that obviously has its limits, especially around 1. Someone's going to get a cheaper card, but you really need to push to make sure you're getting a card round 1, and you just are really hoping it's a good one. I don't know if you can even like find a way to start talking to Atreides from the get-go and be like, hey, listen, I will let you go take the spice blow if you just tell me which card I need to bid on. But even that's dangerous, because the second you start bidding on it, somebody else could most of the table can outbid you. So it's really rough. Basically, you just need to throw 3 spice at a card and hope you get one round 1, and hope it's a decent one.
I mean, I would say going into it, your best bet as far as getting Atreides to give you that secret information is that you have some secret information as well when it comes to the way that the storm is going to move.
Yeah, if the storm is near enough then that it might impact their second round, you guys could swap some info and try to get a good card.
Or a spice blow, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a like, I will show you the secret storm card if you will show me a card that is useful to me, and then let me know, essentially.
Yeah. So then your other thing round 1 is you have got to jump on wherever those first spices come from, so that you can get more money to buy more cards round 2. Because you're probably not, if you get a card round 1, the chances of it being good are just all over the place. And so next round you've got to get more cards, so you got to get a decent amount of spice. Obviously the main way of doing this is attacking early, get it, and jumping on the spice, and maybe you get there first and other people go, it's not worth the fight, I don't want to have to put up with Stilgar, I haven't gotten good cards yet either, so not worth it. And people talk about this more than Hunter and I do this, but try trading, try offering up, hey, I won't go for the spice if you give me spice, or vice versa. I'll give you 1 or 2 of my spice that I didn't end up spending on a card if you let me just go jump on this spice uninhibited. This is something that a lot of communities talk about, and obviously it is most relevant with Fremen. Spice trading is. Other factions can do it, but because Fremen are kind of always hunting for it, you might need to like develop your skills at learning like how people will work around spice trading with you, and whether or not you jump on it and you pay them for the access to it so that they don't try to take it from you,
right,
or vice versa, or whatever. There's some stuff in there that it's always going to come down to what your group does. So I can't give you like solid advice there, but it's something to be on the lookout for.
I mean, like we said, we haven't run into it a lot in our own games, but I do see a lot of people talking online of frequently trying to extort the Fremen out of spice.
Yeah.
So I would say my advice to you is know when you are in an extortable position or not. If you got a crummy hand of cards, then I think it's time to, get a little socialism in your life and spread the wealth around, I guess.
Yeah.
If you feel like it's a bluff, or you feel like you could take them in a fight, then I don't know, go for it.
Let's talk about these weaknesses that Fremen has, of which there are many. We've harped on it a lot.
Many times, yeah. Bad
your early hand sucks, and you've got to get it better. But the bigger thing is it's really hard to find allies, And winning alone can be tricky. Winning with allies can be tricky. It's kind of just a tricky game for Fremen. They're not. It's not easy to do stuff. I would say the only thing that I think really improves your chances is that Bene Gesserit relationship.
Yeah.
Because you have such a clear path. Everything else is just like I hope I can make it work. Man, I hope it just like everything will work out in such a way that I come out on top of this. But so much of your game is taking the chances on pushing for that fight, pushing for the spice, and seeing what you can do. It's a rough life out there for the Sand people. And the last one is your cheap option to get on the map means it can be tricky to afford getting on the west side when you need it. So the thing there being like you have access to one side of the map really easily, and it makes it really hard to justify ever going to the other side of the map. And that's something that I think, especially early on, that's something newer players struggle with, is like you just never see Fremen get on the other side of the map. And I think figuring out really reliable ways to put yourself in those positions will help you learn how to play a better Fremen. Is like, how do I make sure I'm not only focusing on Sietch Tabur and Habanya Sietch all game? I don't need to only be doing that. How can I kind of get out on the rest of the map so that I'm not missing out on any spice ever?
I'm getting the message, Matt. They're crummy, don't play them. But I get it. But let's say we had to play them. How do we win? How do we sew this up somehow and make this work?
Well, I think the first thing we have to sort of rely on is that we're probably going to be alone. Getting an alliance is going to be kind of tricky for us. So if you are alone, you are always looking to stall the game out. I think a Fremen trying to lock down 3 territories is a fairly big ask. Now, this can be offset by if you do ship those 10 first ones to False Wall South, and then you get pretty good positions on the eastern strongholds, you could find a situation where you get into it. But I don't suspect you're going to find a win by going for Carthag or Arakeen on your own and then holding 2 other territories. I think you need too much to take either of those. So your mission is stall the game out until some other sort of opportunity arises, right? You are just there to get spice and prevent everyone else from winning until there's a really cool round that you can actually turn something into a victory this round. But beyond that, your whole MO is like, nope, let's get to the end of round 10 and let me keep the people off of the 3 territories I need to keep them off of.
I mean, you really only need to do it at the end, right? So, I mean, I feel like in that one, it's more about gathering spice and letting the other players wear each other down while keeping yourself very fresh. You know what I mean? Yeah. You got to stay out of conflict, basically. Just kind of slowly build up and be ready to kind of blitz at the end. And I think hope generally that everybody else wears themselves down and trying to avoid having to intervene unless someone is absolutely going to win. I do feel like, though, like, you are probably going to end up with some option for an alliance. Yeah. So I would say, obviously take everything me and Matt say really, really seriously. But in the alliance section, we outlined a lot of like, oh, that's crummy, that one's crummy, this one's crummy for this reason, this one's crummy for that reason. But remember, at the end of the day, if having an ally is going to help you win, even if none of the abilities apply, it's still probably worth that versus going for the kind of very easily ruined special victory condition. You know what I mean? It's such a specific ask of the victory that I feel like it would be misleading to say like, oh, like, yeah, you should just start planning. Because, I mean, I just feel like it'd be hard to plan for, too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
I like your point of you only have to worry about those specific territories at the end, right?
Yes.
Just keep everybody else from winning, and then in, like, the last 2 rounds, set up a situation where the factions you don't want in certain spots aren't in those certain spots. I think that is an attainable goal. And with certain alliances, and it wholly depends on what alliance you're in, you can accomplish those other things, too, right?
Yes.
And I think all of your alliance are purely territory based of how you go for them, right? So if you ally with Harkonnen or Atreides, you're probably going to focus on
Habanya Sietch and Tuix Sietch, or Habanya Sietch and Tuix Sietch, and you're going to let them mess with Sietch Tabur and their home territory, right? You're going to let them go for the north, and you're going to go for the south.
Right.
But then when you have Bene Gesserit, it's like you shift the whole thing 90 degrees. Now you're worrying about the east, and Bene Gesserit is going to worry about the west. So it is all wholly dependent on which alliance you're in, how you orient your two main things, which is kind of the bigger reason why like you need to figure out where you need to put your units. You know, you're going to put a big stack of units somewhere. It is better to figure that out as early as possible. So you're trying to ally early. I just don't know how much success you'll have in like the first Nexus getting an ally.
Yeah. It's gonna be rough. I feel like we've given you some data you can use to make some cases. Like I think that Bene Gesserit case that could work for somebody sometime, just depending on how things are shaken out. It also depends on how many rounds we get into before the first Nexus. So I mean, I would say early game, stay open, but maybe don't like risk things, so that maybe by the time a Nexus comes around, you might look like you're doing better than everybody else. I just feel like in general, Fremen is not a like hit the ground running and start telling people who's boss. It's kind of a like we stay out in the desert and we collect spice when we can and we play nice until we can kind of get. It's like the Sardak Nor of Dune, where it's like you kind of start at a disadvantage, so you need to be a nice neighborhood Fremen, and then and then make it where before they can really do anything about you, it's too late. Also, though, get blue eye contacts so that you can role play the Fremen correctly, because they have blue, kind of glowy water eyes.
And
it's
ride
pretty
that
cool.
worm,
and
baby.
ride the worm,
Ride
baby.
The worm.
Yeah, and if you can buy, watch the David Lynch Dune adaptation, which is, I think we've been on the record in saying it's very good and that we don't need another one. And one of the best things that David Lynch decided to do with the Fremen costumes, if you look at David Lynch's Fremen costumes, they make a lot of sense because they look like something you'd wear in the desert, and they definitely don't look like something you would wear to like a goth dungeon party that was designed by H.R. Giger.
All right, with that, let's hit up some errata. We gotta do the Spacing Guild errata, and I've only got one major note in here. Hunter, turns out we freaking nailed it. We freaking nailed it with the Spacing Guild.
Hashtag nailed it.
Hashtag nailed it. But if there's one thing that's kind of a fun, interesting note with Spacing Guild, and honestly this ties even more into Fremen, but NBSP 1618 had this to say, and I saw them kind of harping on this on a few different conversations, but this was a point about the Spacing Guild alliance with the Fremen. It's a strong play for Spacing Guild to use the Fremen to lock down one side of the map, just being a pain to everyone else. They sacrifice their troops to get other players feeding the tanks. Then, late in the game, you break the alliance and take what you need to finish the game for yourself. Basically, everyone can do this with Fremen. NBSP basically has this working theory about forming alliances with the sole intent to break them, that being part of your strategy of the alliance. Now, obviously, this is a risky thing because you can only break that alliance if the Nexus comes up, and you don't get to control the timing of that.
Right.
But it's still an interesting idea, and especially with the Fremen of, you might not have that many long-term gains with the Fremen, but you can ally with the Fremen, send them out to go do a bunch of fighting. They kind of lose a bunch of stuff to the tanks, and then it's like, all right, I'm peacing out now that you've done all my dirty work for me. I'm gonna go take all the weak territories you've just set up for myself, because I get to ship wherever I want for free, not for free, but half price, and just go win by myself immediately after breaking the alliance. Or I switch into some other stronger alliance. But there's kind of a benefit to abusing the Fremen alliance, which is funny that we're talking about this in the Fremen episode.
Right.
Hey, look out for that, Fremen players. That other people are just using you and then planning to break their alliance with you and have no intent of winning the game with you.
Yeah, no. Maybe we should just change the whole guide to be like, don't ally with anyone. No one is trustworthy.
Don't trust them. Don't believe their lies.
All right, and that's it for the errata. That's how much I redeemed myself from my big Harkonnen mistake. Whatever. There's always going to be one. There's always going to be one.
There's always one major goof. All right, it's time to shift gears, Hunter. We're out of Dune. We're not in outer space anymore. Now we're in outer space with Twilight Imperium. We've got some more tournament updates.
Did you just say we're not in outer space anymore?
I sure did.
We're in outer space.
That was my bit. So
I don't even understand what you mean by that. I don't even see how that's a bit. Anyways, the tournament has been going on, and we've got some updates for y'all. We're going to start with game 19. First game, we can kind of do these back and forth, Matt. We're just going to go through them real fast. There's a lot of information here, but we're going to pound it into your brain. Game 19. Nope, shut up. No laughing. We're doing it. Game 19, the winner was Rolo, the Ledgerman of the Cones, playing as Barony in Gashfather. Common combination.
yeah, weirdly, I mean,
That's one of the storylines of the slice.
Yeah.
I made an early deal to give Welland to Chalklax, who was playing as L1, in return for his ceasefire. Meanwhile, Roffelmeister, who was playing as Sardak, and I maintained fairly friendly relations as well. So I had friendly neighbors on both sides. For the most part, I was the friendly barony. But I really pushed it with Chalklax. In the mid-game, I made a surprise attack on Abyss Freya. He had Welland, but no ships above it. So I flew right over and took Abyss Freya so I could score corner the market with Mir, Zobat, Abyss, and Freya. I would go on to keep Abyss and Freya for another round. He didn't like it, but he wasn't in a position to take it back with force. Ooh, what a friendly barony. So relations remained icy between us. But again, I had his ceasefire, and that was something. Overall, Vision S, playing as Ghost, one of our moderators, our moderator that's done the most work for us, and everyone needs to thank her every single time her name comes up. So thank you, Vision S. Vision S and I had a number of disagreements about who was the biggest threat at the table and who needed to be most kept in check. Sol took Mechatol Rex fairly early, which in my mind made him the problem to address. But Vision S was involved in a protracted border war with Isarl, in which Thibba went back and forth between them. She argued that while Sol appeared threatening, these things have a way of going to the surprise behind the surprise from behind candidate, who she thought was Isarl. When public execution came up, that was a heated debate, but in the end, Isarl was the target and was publicly executed. But Vision S still wanted Isarl out of Thibba and out of contention. So during the mid-game, I forgot which round, Vision S, Chalklax, and I had a secret conversation in which we formed a coalition to break the backs of both Isarl and Sol. They would hurt Sol, and I would hurt Isarl, although my heart wasn't in it since Isarl wasn't leading on the score track. This was a partnership of convenience. Friendly barony. Okay. I used the Krias IFF to get into the empty space right above Turtle's Paradise, and I took Shalak. I freely admitted that hostilities between us would cease if Isarl ceded Thibba to Vision S. I'm just a hired gun here. My employer wants you out of Thibba now. That sort of thing. Vision S and Chalklax held up their end of the bargain as well, and going into the late game, both Sol and Isarl were adequately punished, although Sol still had as good a shot as anyone. In the mid-game, I wasn't sure where this was the early game? What? In the mid-game, I wasn't sure where my points were going to come from, but the agenda deck delivered. Over the course of a couple of rounds, two things happened. Judicial abolishment came up, while we had only one law in play. Since there was no way that law wasn't going to win, I played Imperial Rider. Oh my god, I hate that.
Yeah, isn't that the
That's
worst?
the number one thing I hate. I played Imperial Rider on it for the sure thing point. What? I wish I could delete that sentence. This brought me to 6 points. Round 5. I was keeping pace with the pack point-wise, but I was still able to argue fairly successfully that the table had bigger fish to fry. I took politics, figuring next round would be the last, but I was at 6 points. I was dirt poor and was desperate to sway the council for my 7th point. I would need 5 trade goods to make up the difference. So when I popped politics, I offered Speaker to my right, but he couldn't meet my price. I took a risk and offered at one more spot to my right, to the Sarl and Turtles. He declined. Well, I took a huge risk and would sell the Speaker I would sell the Speaker token 3 spots to the right to Vision S in Brudder, who took the deal. That's so wild. Yeah. Going into the final round, I would pick 4th, but I knew that if I didn't score Sway the Council in round 5, I had no shot. Now, that is good. That's
Foresight,
good brain right there.
Yeah.
At least picking 4th, there was hope. And I also knew something else. When I looked at the agenda deck, Shard of the Throne was in there. I made it the second agenda. So at the end of round 5, I scored Sway the Council for my 7th point, and then Shard of the Throne came up. There was a good deal of talk over who would take the shard and keep it safe. In the end, the votes forced Visioness into choosing between me and Soul. I'm sure she hated that choice, but I was the lesser of two evils, I guess. I won the shard for my 8th point. Everyone was coming together for me. Revolutionized warfare was where the game ended. This put several players, including myself, in striking distance of the win, as long as someone took technology. Classic prisoner's dilemma. No one wants to take tech with its 7th placed initiative order. So we're all hoping someone else will. To complicate things, Rafflemeister has public disgrace, and we all know it. Isarl had seen as much. Tense strategy phase in which we're all trying to map out who should take what. Despite choosing 4th, I was able to get Diplo. Rafflemeister allowed it. Rafflemeister took tech. I spent my first action bringing all the fleets home. I could not lose a battle or I'd lose the shard. My home had 5 Dread 2s, and it was my only system. I was as hunkered down as I'd get. Now the table would work together, taking turns to pummel my home system, hoping someone could win a fight and take the shard from me. Chalklax went first. He was able to damage several of my dreads before I realized my mistake. Oh my god, I didn't need to be fighting this fight. I had his ceasefire, remember? Why did I allow this fight to happen? No! This would be the mistake that would haunt me for the next year. But the dice gods forgave my foolishness and smiled upon me. I was able to hold off Chalklax's attack. Then I was barely able to hold off Visioness's attack that followed. I popped Diplo and my win was locked in. I won despite an 11th hour mistake that made my stomach sink. Whew. That was a good story.
A long one.
Thank you, Rolo.
Next up, we've got game 21, which is a win by Connor as L1Z1X in Daddy Warbucks. And here's Connor's write-up. Really tight, well-played game across the table. In particular, I want to highlight that Mentak and Mulmaganker played a fantastic game, as did Necro, who nearly had the win before making a couple small mistakes under 5-player pressure at the end. He managed to be in a position to win despite a non-ideal slice and a consistent plastic problem. They did some great work trading with each other and helped build each other up, but I was generally preoccupied with my side of the table, so you'd be able to get more complete picture from them. Vaunt was in a tough spot as the Yin Brotherhood in the best one, which we all knew had several wins. I gave Barony my support for the throne for nothing other than a go that way and let me pay you for losing the support if you attack him. Vaunt successfully got an early support swap, first one of the game, with Barony, Datamonk. Barony was kind of paralyzed with supports to both neighbors and kept on picking trade in order to build up cash flow while trying to keep the points. It helps that we didn't have that many control objectives come out. However, Necro eventually moved to blockade the dock over Baragler to 4 with Mentak's tactical support, and we were able to talk Barony into blockading the Yin's home system, effectively taking Vaunt out of the game for a turn or two. So one of our poor finalists being a targeted harassment in yet another game. However, Barony didn't follow up and take Vaunt's planets, instead negotiating to support swap again and being paid to leave. Extra sat back in Turtle's Paradise and kept scoring objectives and using Quash to threaten control of the agenda phase. Going into the final round, we had the extra objective agenda come out, and the objective was able to force it to be a 2-pointer that nobody really had much of a shot at. Conquer the Weak for 11 planets. So prior to that, it was likely that Mentak and I were the only ones in range that round. Mentak grabbing Imperial with me with a shot at conquering 11 non-home planets, and the scored 3 tech skip objective, the 2 mech points. Boy, there's all kinds of things in here. But basically, I'm losing track of the story here. The 2 mech points I scored basically won me the game by allowing late game flexibility. Personally, I think that in Warbucks it's a bit of a must to grab Mechatol in order to have the influence needed to pay for a complete game. I agree with that.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. However, I'm not sure I could have dealt with the sustained table attack to hold on to an objective
if that 2-pointer hadn't come out to distract folks. I really thought I'd messed my win condition in the previous round. I'd been going for an Imperial win on round 5, but missed my win by screwing up a couple of non-binding negotiations and some timing. Basically, I needed to snag a support point on the previous agenda phase to win, but because Vaunt and Datamonk were able to reignite their deal even after Datamonk stabbed him in the back, I wasn't able to talk Data into giving me a support for leaving his territory. I'd scored threatened enemies next to his home world and Gashfather in revenge for his failure to follow up on our non-binding support swap. That's in quotes. And after being paid by Vaunt to go do so, he'd offer me a support once he activated Datamonk and given me trade goods for the moment. Phew! Due to command token economy, I wasn't able to stall out on my move until after Vaunt activated Data, and therefore was forced to move forward prior to receiving the support, letting them both understandably refusing to give me the point given my strong position. I had political stability and 3 sabotages were burned, but I wasn't able to get Extra to exhaust their sabotage, and they, of course, sabotaged it, leaving me 4th in speaker order going into that crazy agenda phase and wondering how I could stop the table from dogpiling me. Honestly, I got lucky on this end. I was able to convince Extra that they needed to be able to stop Barony and had to take Warfare, allowing me to take Diplomacy, and I committed to spending the command counters so I couldn't score that objective. This left Mentak at 7 with Imperial going into the final round, Necro with 8 and Leadership, Extra with Warfare at 8, and me with 9 as Diplo, Barony at 8 with Politics, I believe, and Vaunt with 6 attack. So, the final turn. The table, or at least Vaunt and Zap, the Extra player, and I, worked together to try and stop Necro and Mentak before the Imperial win. Necro ended up losing one of their 2 supports when they activated their home system to build after Extra warfared off the token to hit it again. It was late and we were all making mistakes. This left me in the best position with Mentak still having a shot, but they hadn't developed enough board reach to be able to pull it out, leaving me to fend off Barony and Extra, but holding a massive plastic advantage and plenty of command counters. I easily scored my secret to win. However, the path getting there was a lot of luck. After that 3rd second pointer came out, it was anyone's game. So Connor, playing a tough game, lots of crazy maneuvering, but obviously willing to admit that some luck has to go your way to pull out all the stops in the final round.
Yeah, and that's so Connor. He's actually one of my students from the dojo, and I've trained him up. This is actually one of the main things that I taught him was to employ these types of strategies. So I will.
Wonderful job.
Yeah, yes, I did a good job. Even though I don't remember actually playing any dojo games with Connor, for sure. I mean, I may have.
You still taught them everything they know.
I taught Connor everything he knows, which is kind of a coincidence because we're going to talk about Game 22 now. Your winner was Boltron, also one of my students. My students are cleaning up, basically. They've been watching me, and they learn from watching a master play. So Boltron is the winner. He was playing as L1 in Gashfather, so another L1 win. This write-up is a little bit shorter.
This one, we have to give some credit here. Space Lawyer has become our field reporter, and going forward, he's been out hitting up everybody in every game and putting together much more condensed versions of these things. So this is due to Space Lawyer's hard work and helping us get more write-ups for these games. So thank you so much, Space Lawyer.
Yeah, our official journalist. Yeah. All right, so denying and hopping on and off Mechatol, a shard and a holy planet, and a foreseeable win for L1 by wheeling and dealing with everyone. Extra was denied.
Tagline.
Yeah, that's the okay, I see. Yeah, it's like a New York Times thing. Extra was denied getting to Mechatol and the custodian point by getting his flank speed sabotaged by Sol. Ooh, that's juicy. Yin taking Mechatol and custodians then Warfares off of Mechatol Rex because of a deal with L1, letting Sol take Mechatol Rex, who put a PDS down to save him from an L1 invasion with 3 Super Dreads. Ixian Artifact gives 2 tech to each player, 6 tokens to Necro. Necro was targeted by some agendas, Wormhole Research, with the Alistair over Lodor, managed to dodge that by putting Politics Rider and Galactic Threat on it. Demilitarized Zone on Lodor with a huge stack of infantry, 2 hot potato points out. Shard hopped only a few times and ended up where it started those hops with Necro. Holy Planet of Ix bounced around all game. Yin worked hard on getting a swing round for the win, but was relentlessly denied Imperial. Round 5, at least 15 secret conversations took place, leading to a 3-hour round. 3-hour round? Are you serious?
That's half of my game.
A Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring length round? Anyways, 3-hour round where several people, Soul, L1, and Necro, were stopped from winning/scoring. Many of those conversations were initiated by a very dealy L1. In the end, L1 won with a Dipload home system and enough influence to buy 5 tokens to score Galvanize the People in round 6. That was a very condensed story of an entire game. That is super impressive. I know I didn't read it that well, but I did not realize that it was actually going to cover the whole game in a paragraph. That is amazing.
Yeah, he's killing it over here. And we've got another one from him. This is for game 23. This was a win by an Asarl player, our first Asarl win in Gashfather. And I'm going to first pronounce this incorrectly, but I've been given the correct pronunciation of this name, but I think mine is better. It's spelled MMRNMHRM. So I'm going to go ahead and call it... that's my guess on how that name is pronounced, but apparently it is actually Mernmerm or Merman Herman. So, whatever. Your mileage may vary. But this is what Space Lawyer has to us about their wins. Our tagline here is, mistakes were made. Yin flew too close to the sun. Asarl wins by doing Asarl things and having the stars aligned in just the right way. So here's the story. Yin, T.G. Welch, started the game hot, getting Mechatol and an early lead out of Daddy Warbucks in an attempt to stop a runaway victory. The Barony player, Gamblor, successfully invaded Yin's home system in round 5 by winning the ground combat with 1 surviving infantry.
Whoa.
Barony also takes Yin's other space dock out on a biz by going through the gravity rift with a dreadnought and survived. Yin threw everything he had back at his home system, failing to take it back by a really unlucky die roll. 1 hit out of 14 dice.
Disgusting.
Besides the action in Yin's home system, players made some really funny mistakes, which are haunting them, I guess. This is based off of their reports. For example, a player activated a home system produce, but forgot to play trade before, and they had no resources, which left them nothing to build, leaving him without any new plastic for the next round. Another player did think they had anti-mass, which they did not have, and activated somewhere he could only get to with anti-mass, burning another command counter. The same player forgot to use transit diodes to reinforce 2 empty planets, and his support for the throne partner was able to snack those planets off of him without losing the support. In the end, Asarl took a classic Asarl victory. They used Magion to get in the silence of space. They stalled everybody out. When everybody passed, they attacked and invaded Sardak's home system by using flank speed and in the silence of space to score Conquer the Weak and win with Form a Spy Network by discarding 5 action cards, which he had, of course, I don't know if it was from the start of the game, but had. Fate was also kind to Asarl since he needed his flagship, Carrier 2, and Gravity Drive to be able to score Conquer the Weak, and a scoreable secret to seal the deal. He drew Form a Spy Network off of Imperial, the best secret for Asarl, and got all that he needed from the last agenda and his action cards. Swords to Plowshares gave him trade goods to build the flagship. Technology Writer gave him Gravity Drive, and a focused researched action card together with the trade goods from Swords to Plowshares let him research Carrier 2. Only because of these circumstances were they able to invade Sardak's home system successfully, and of course, a fighter prototype and a morale boost helped to secure the win. So Asarl very much doing Asarl things.
That's very cool. That what a wild game. I remember when that game was going on, people were like murmuring that like T.G. Welch was running away with it.
Yeah.
And of course we love
crushed.
T.G. Welch and we love playing with him. He's a great guy.
But
yeah,
to see him go.
Yep.
He
I
could have been a contender.
I would say overall the storyline of, and I'm excited about this, by the way. I'm not bringing this up as if it's a downer, but a lot of the people that we are familiar with, that we know, the kind of known factors got bounced out of the prelims. Like if you know us,
unknowns. It's going to be new personalities going into these semis for sure.
Right. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm going to be really excited about the semifinals, getting to know a lot of new players, a lot of new faces, and then of course Magi could not. He just couldn't stay out. You know what I mean? He was just like, nope. I get the trend is that all of the known factors are going to get bounced out, and he was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to.
All right after Hunter and I finished, we actually had to stop recording, so now I'm doing the rundown by myself, which means it's going to be a quick rundown. Hi everybody, it's Matt from Sword of the Future. I want to thank all of our patrons and everybody on the Discord for being a part of the community. It's super fun, and all of our patrons for contributing to the show. Tournament entrants, there's been scheduling emails out. If you have not had a game scheduled and you expected yourself to be in the tournament, please check your email. If you don't see the email, look in your spam folder. If you don't see it in your spam folder, please email me. I would like to know what's going on. But we want to get you in games. I've got like sort of 3 games left to schedule. I have a handful that are like theoretically scheduled, but I haven't penciled them in yet. I haven't sent out the emails, so don't freak out if you haven't received, that final game scheduling email yet, but they should be coming very, very soon. If you are in the Galactic Council, we have a vote coming up for our next Galactic Council episode. We're either doing a Dune review, our review of the Dune board game, or we're doing Hunter's and my prelim elite tournament strats, whatever that means to you or us. I don't know what it means yet. I guess I have to start coming up with how I would play if I ever played in a tournament. We also have our Oath thoughts, what we're thinking about the game Oath that we've been playing for the past few weeks from Leader Games. It's been super fun, but I can't give you away all the thoughts yet. You have to vote on that episode. Also, we've got the Hakan versus Mentak option, which is essentially similar to our Soul versus Yin episode from a few months ago. It's where we take 2... factions that relate to a pretty similar mechanic, and then when they're in the game together, it really kind of throws a new dynamic into the storyline of that game. So we wanted to break down, what does it look like when Hakan and Mentak are both in the game? How does trade explode? So those are your options. If you're in the Galactic Council, get in there and vote. Next week we will dwindle all of those choices down to 2, and then we'll do another week or 2 or something like that of voting on just 2 remaining options. Speaking of 2 remaining options, we only have 2 remaining options left for the Hunter Donaldson fan club game that's going on next Friday. So if you want to see that game, it's going to be Friday the 21st of February, and your options are either a game on the rough draft of the semis map that I actually posted on the Discord yesterday for people to start testing. So if you want to see what could potentially be the semis map, or sort of what the semis map might look like, it is on the Discord, and you can also tune into that game. I can already tell you this much, that the map that is currently out there will 100% change. I already have some changes in mind that are minor little tweaks, but I need to get more data. I need to figure out what, how people actually play on these things. You can't just theory craft a map. It's super helpful to get games on it. So please maybe stick around for that, or Hunter might hop on the bandwagon of the TI Franken draft. There's a whole group of people that play Franken every single Friday. So it's either a game on the semis map or a Franken draft game with Hunter next week. I want to thank all of our producers and partners, which that's what we call our Space Kitties and Weird Bears. Our Weird Bears, I want to thank Ponchadori, Fargonis, and TG Welch. And our Space Kitties, I want to thank Naderades, Patience is a Virtue, Umar, Firoso, Julian, Arwise, Necro Firewall, and Kraken. Also, on the Twitch and YouTube side of things, we just finished getting the Oath series up on YouTube. So there's 3 episodes of that on our YouTube, and there's actually 1 more episode of that over on the Leader Games YouTube of us playing 4 different games of Oath. And so if you want to see the whole series play out over the course of basically an arc, we tried to make it a one consistent storyline. We called it Season 0. We want to do Oath again in the future, but see episode, I guess, 3 on our channel, technically the 4th game, was our season finale. I did air quotes there. So if you want to check that out, please go watch those games. They're a little bit different than TI. We get a little bit weirder, and we're not doing nearly as much strategic insights into the game, I guess. I don't know. We very much lean into the theme of that game and have a lot of fun with it. Also, I just this last Sunday started a game of Franken Draft myself. I just kind of randomly picked up a game of Franken, and I didn't actually get to finish it, which is why we're probably not going to put that game up on YouTube. But if you want to watch the first half of it, it's on our Twitch. And then when I left, actually Vision S, one of our moderators took over the stream. She was also playing in the game. So if you want to see the second half of that game, go to twitch.tv/visioness. That's VISIONESS. So you can kind of see the whole game if you jump between the two different Twitches. But it was a fun game. It was really ridiculous. I was trying to keep my salt levels intact, and then I got sandwiched between two players that very much wanted to poke the bear and bring out all the salt in me. So it was me restraining myself as best as I possibly could, and hopefully I did an okay job. Finally, you can rate us on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Please give us a 5-star rating. It helps increase visibility and gets more people to know about these games that we love, so that we have more people to play the games with. You can also find us on Twitter at SpaceCatsPod. You can find us on Facebook, Space Cats Peace Turtles, and there should be a link in the description of this for a link to our Discord, where you can get involved in all the different conversations that are going on right now. It's a really fun time of year to be on the Discord because there's so much going on with the Patreon tournament. There's always updates of any games that are ongoing and people theory crafting. Right now, since the semis map was just posted, there's all kinds of theory crafting on what could happen on the semis map. So just lots of fun Twilight Imperium conversations, lots of fun Dune and Root and Oath conversations on there as well. So please come join us. Won't you? Won't you come join us? Thanks for listening to Space Cats Peace Turtles, and thanks to Brian Capillis for the use of his music. You can find more at wanderinglake.bandcamp.com. The spice must flow.